Welcome, Habibis. Get settled in. It's another Habibi Power Hour. I'm your host, Siraj Hashmi, joined by my co-host, Mujahed Kobbe. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Oh, welcome, Habibis. Let's all get settled in. Grab a drink, grab a catheter or a pair. It depends. Depending on your bladder situation. We want to get right into it because we got a jam-packed show, and we're going to bring in our guest this evening, our Habibi of the hour, Zaid Jilani, journalist and writer. Welcome, Zaid, to Habibi Power Hour.
Yeah, great to be here. I've a long-time listener, first-time caller.
Very appreciated.
We appreciate you joining us, and we're just gonna. First of all, just tell us a little bit about yourself. What got you into journalism and sort of the position you find yourself in today?
Yeah, so I graduated from college, undergrad in 2009. I moved to kind of the DC area. Which is where I basically got involved in journalism and kind of nonprofit advocacy. I worked at Center for American Progress, worked at a couple of different journalistic outfits since then. And basically, I was covering DC politics, Capitol Hill, Congress, State Department, a little bit of international stuff, as well as like state and local races and government. And so basically, I was an all-rounder in politics, kind of on the more progressive side, although now I think I'm a little bit more independent, not necessarily to one side or another. I try to kind of just call the strikes a little bit more these days rather than bat for one side.
Mm-hmm. And for those who are just joining us, Zaid has a dishwasher that's currently getting busy in the other room. So apologies right now for we are an encouraging group. We don't judge any dishwashers for in the realm of courtship.
Everybody has something during COVID, like a baby or a cat that comes on the screen. I just have my dishwasher. That's my gimmick.
Right there. There's your BBC moment right there.
Exactly.
So we're going to get into Harper's letter in a little bit. But the last week, that was a big controversy. But before we get into the weekly Jihad, let's just touch on our Jihad on Tap, the news of the day. First of all, for those who are not familiar, this afternoon, Twitter completely disabled the ability for many accounts, specifically verify blue check marks like myself. I hate both of you, you unverified bastards. Following a massive hack on the social media website, and that included accounts like Barack Obama, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, Joe Biden, Kanye West, all of it. Did I just say Kanye West? I meant Kanye West.
I'm rubbing off on you a little bit.
I'm turning into Jay. My apologies. Anyways, Twitter didn't really find who hacked all of these accounts, but shut down tweeting anyways. So all those non-blue checks, all the Habibis. First of all, the list works, and the list came for everybody. How did it feel being on the other side of that?
Well, for one thing, there was no bad takes on Twitter. Once all you blue checks were gone, it was glorious. It was harmonious. Everybody had the perfect take. Everyone was completely right. No, everyone was their own expert on everything. It was
Nobody
great.
got canceled. There was no one to do the canceling, right? So it was like a free-for-all.
Was it because everybody all the blue checks got canceled?
Yeah, like we canceled the cancelers, and then we just we were finally free. Free. It was freedom for everybody, really. Like,
God, I will say there was like a sense of peace that I got out of it because all I could do was retweet stuff, and then I tweeted. Well, I didn't tweet. Ernie tweeted. I just gave him access to my phone to tweet, in which he basically became everyone's warlord. So He'll be joining us. He's taking a little snooze right now. Moving on. Trump.
No, one thing
what was that?
I was worried when we were seeing like Barack Obama get hacked and some other people get hacked that the president was going to get hacked as well. And
did he not get hacked?
No, and before we came on this, Zaid made a good point about if he didn't get hacked, does Twitter give him some sort of extra security on these things, or what was going on there?
How many people have access to his account? It's at least him and Dan Scavino, right?
I wouldn't know that.
It's got to be. I mean, like, I wouldn't be surprised. You know how Kanye was in the White House back in 2018, and he whips out his phone and he does his little, punch in the numbers, and his passcode is it's like 6 zeros. Like, what are the odds that Trump also doesn't have that type of passcode? It's got to be. I mean, it's got to be pretty high, right? I mean, or good odds. Right? It's favorable. So, anyways, President Trump, he demoted Brad Parscale, his campaign manager, and elevated Bill Stepien. And he actually announced that shit on Facebook, of all places. Face boomer. And I will say I'm surprised by the timing of it. I would have thought that he would have demoted him after the Tulsa rally, because that was such a disaster. Zaid, your thoughts?
I mean, yeah, like, the problem with the Trump orbit is that nobody lasts very long in the Trump orbit unless you're like related to him. So it's almost remarkable in some ways that Brad Parscale lasted this long, considering Brad, I think he has, particularly because he has kind of a reputation for being fairly competent. And there comes a time, I think, when you are at a certain level of confidence and you're around Trump to where you just rub him the wrong way, and it doesn't seem like he lasts very long. And I think one example of that was Jefferson Sessions, who just lost his Senate primary. Trump basically campaigned against his own former attorney general, which was an extremely odd thing, but didn't turn out very well for him.
Yeah, it's funny. Boris Farage comes in. Is your dishwasher wanking up your washing machine? We apologize. As we mentioned before, Zaid's gimmick is the dishwasher. That is the one thing he brings to the table, to the discussion. We're hoping that ends sometime soon, but we're just gonna live with it. This is a lot.
Let him have his fun. It's quarantine. It's boring. Let him have its fun.
Jay, I mean, we talked about the Tulsa rally and how all of these TikTok teens and K-pop stans sabotage the Trump campaign with these Tulsa tickets. And I feel like it's almost directly linked that as soon as Trump holds this rally, the first action is to not fire or demote Parscale, but it's to ban TikTok.
Right. That could have been it. I mean, but I think the reason why it took him a while to do it is because he wanted to seem like he wasn't predictable, because everyone predicted that Brad was going to get, the can and all that kind of stuff, because it was such a horrible showing on it. And to Zaid's point, it's exactly how it is. Like, you have to praise Trump. You have to make sure that you're doing good by him, all of that stuff. And I think the reason why Brad lasted as long as he did is because of like how he can be a little out there on Twitter or on social media, like, going back at people who are trying to say something, like a clapback or whatever. I think Trump likes that stuff, and that's the reason why Brad lasted the way he did. But I mean, you can't hide the fact that Tulsa was so bad. And Brad was trying to say, like, we got 800,000 tickets. We got 1 million tickets. We got all this kind of stuff. It's going to be amazing. And he's going to have to be outside and all this kind of stuff. And then it just showcases 80 people at the rally. And I bet that Trump was furious. Like, I think he wanted to fire him throw him in jail, and like never hear about Brad ever again after that.
Send him to Gitmo.
Yeah.
That would have been wild. I mean, think of the people who would actually stand up for Brad. It would be probably just Zaid, right? Because Zaid's actually been very consistent on this sort of stuff. You might be the one person.
I think I would say that Brad should at least go to like a Norwegian jail, like Scandinavian, where like you get a PlayStation and you have like a pretty chill apartment. Like you don't have your freedom. Like you should still go to jail, but like it should just be nice to him, kind of. And
yeah,
that's probably punishment for not being able to have a giant rally during a pandemic. So,
I mean,
there you go.
We all knew it was going to be a disaster one way or the other. It was going to be a disaster if there were a lot of people who went, and COVID started spreading like wildfire. Right. And I guess the flip side of that coin, I don't know what COVID cases look like in Oklahoma at the moment, but I can't imagine that it's good in any other place of the country. I'm actually worried that DC is going to have a second surge, and people are going to be idiots and try to get it. I don't know. We'll see what happens, but
be idiots and try to get it.
Yeah,
no, it's for. I think places like DC, New York, you're going to see a second surge from a lot of these places that opened up after.
Well, what drives me nuts, and we're getting slightly off topic just because we're talking about coronavirus, but you see tweets from like Jennifer Rubin and Valerie Jarrett talking about how New York like absolutely, and then of course Andrew Cuomo saying that they absolutely beat COVID to shit, and saying like this is how you govern. Like, where the hell have you been? This is the talk of a crazy person. Like, no one looks at New York and be like, yeah, I actually really wish that happened in our state.
Right.
I mean, Zaid, am I being gaslit here?
I mean, it was genuinely strange because Cuomo is like generally a savvy politician. Like he, at the very beginning of the whole coronavirus pandemic, he was doing like press conferences as frequently as Trump was, being real showman about it. And it kind of worked for him. Like he was very brazen, like just by kind of presenting himself as a countervailing voice in the national debate, being on television, having constant press conferences, having his brother host him on CNN. I think his approval rating went like way up, like way up. But then like New York City got hit so bad, so severely that I think a lot of people were kind of thinking, okay, New York didn't really dodge a bullet here. Cuomo didn't do a great job. But then Cuomo comes out and is like, I did do a great job. Like I even have this mountain I had my intern build. And like, this is how good we did that like we got this far. And like he's crazy about it. Like it is very Trump in a way, in that he thinks he can kind of just get away with it and he'll just pull it off by just talking as if that's what happened. And
real quick, that poster, what was the one thing that really blew your mind about that? Let's start off with you, Jay. Did you see the poster?
Yeah, and the thing that gets to me is he's bringing out this mountain, and he put it on the poster and everything. He's like, look at how good we did, and this mountain is dead bodies. That's what this mountain is.
That's so crazy.
You don't. We were told to stay at home, flatten the curve, and everything. So you wanted to do a little up and dip and make sure that everything's okay. He went way overboard with the deaths and cases and all that kind of stuff. And the media, in my point of view, really gave him a pass. They're slowly starting to react to it. You had Jake Tapper do his tweet thread and then do a national thing on it, but he never stated anything about his brother, interviewing his brother and stuff. Like, I think that was like grossly incompetent of CNN, and they should rightfully get hounded about that, because they're allowing him to look like a competent governor when he signed in policies that killed grandmas, when they were talking about DeSantis killing grandmothers for opening the beaches. And now I just hope that slowly the same people in the media that were giving him a pass will review what they were saying before and actually, report on it honestly. because he had what 32,000 deaths in New York.
Yeah, something like that. Also, Zaid, just FYI, when Jay says Jake Taper, he means Jake Tapper.
I was
That's
wondering
what
if that was an inside joke or something, or like on this
No,
show.
so Jay, every time Jay mispronounces a name, because this is a power hour, the Habibis have to drink. And usually every time Jay says 100%, which I actually have not heard yet tonight, he's been very good. We'll see what happens. Every time I say essentially, I have to drink. And every time Jay says it's 100%, he has to drink. Zaid, what was the part of the poster that really just rubbed you the wrong way?
Well, kind of the whole thing rubbed me the wrong way because as Jay was saying, why are you visualizing the deaths of so many people in this manner? Why are you patting yourself on the back over it? But wasn't there a boyfriend cliff or something like within
there's the boy.
A visualization.
I'm looking at the visualization right now. I'm looking for the boyfriend clip, and I can't seem to find it. Oh, I see it. It's like it's really small in there. You could probably see it right there. Boyfriend clip, right next to the
This it seems like he almost put a joke, like it was intended as a joke.
He's
Part of
joking about a fucking pandemic.
Yeah, like a boyfriend cliff. That is a short increase of deaths of people, and then he's like, "Oh, it's just like it's someone hanging there," and it's like, what is this guy doing? Like,
it's we last week with the whole Tammy Duckworth thing, one of the main criticism against her was that she was not being a serious politician by not going on Tucker after he insulted her. Andrew Cuomo is not a serious politician. And it's amazing that he continues to get a pass to this day. I mean, he's got fucking Love Wins at the top of this mountain. Look at that. You see the rainbow? I'm going to zoom in. Look at that.
It's so bad.
Love Wins.
It's so bad.
Who does
that?
Really
is. It really, really is. It's total North Korean. There is a unicorn in the cave propaganda. It really is. And people are just like, let him go get away with it and stuff. I mean, Daily Caller and right-wing places were like, well, he put this policy in that killed 6,000 people. He put this thing, and nobody else would get onto it. So they'll just say, it's just right-wing media attacking the governor and stuff.
Yeah. And
honestly, I am satisfied with the fact that people are finally starting to rightfully, report on it.
Yeah. Anyways, sorry for getting off topic. I think I'm glad we actually touched on that because I wasn't initially thinking about Andrew Cuomo's poster, but God, that was fucking awful. Anyways, Kanye West, after 10 days of running for president, decided he would bow out. Everybody's making the same joke about he's being the electoral college dropout. I made that joke a week ago, okay? Everybody's stealing my shit. And I'm pissed. I'm not getting the retweets. I'm not getting the likes. I'm not getting the shares on Instagram. I'm not going viral. I'm mad. I'm mad about that. I'm more mad about that than him ever running for president because these dad jokes, they might be really horrible, but they're mine, damn it.
I felt like not that many people remembered that he promised that he would run for president. Like he literally said
in 2015. He said it in 2015.
Like people have short memories. Like the man was trying to keep his word here.
Yeah.
And actually do the thing. But then, I just he did it past pretty much all the filing deadlines with no organization or ability to overcome the historic two-party monopoly, which you'd probably have to plan for years and raise $1 gazillion. So he didn't necessarily do it in the most confident way, but he did keep his word. Like he did briefly run for president after saying he would run for president. So
I mean, you of all things, you cannot call Kanye West a liar.
You can't.
He is, if anything, he is the only politician who keeps his promises. Right? Makes you think. One like equals one prayer. I mean, Jay, what do you think? I mean, you never took him seriously, did you?
No, I didn't. Honestly, in 2015 and now, like, it's very hard to, because I do think he's suffering, and I think there's a there's an aspect of it that where he needs a little bit more consolidation, some help, something. And I think it's wrong to make it out to be the joke that it is. That's the problem. It is a little bit of a joke. But you're right. He did keep his promise. He did run in 2020, as brief as it was, and it's what 2020 is. It's
all right.
It
What's
would be
the
nothing
dishwasher
without
doing
it.
that? Is that the dishwasher?
No,
No,
no. That's
dishwasher's chilling now. It's over. It's had its fill.
All right.
that's
So what's
my
going on,
side.
Jay?
No, sorry, no. My girlfriend is getting on the Peloton, so she's putting the
Oh, the Peloton.
Yeah.
Oh, that piece of shit. People may not remember I helped drop the stock price of Peloton by tweeting about it.
You're right.
And I had people thanking me, and also I've never received more hatred, even more than after 9/11, for my role in Peloton having their stock price drop than after 9/11. God. Anyways, moving on. Nick Cannon, the actor, TV show host, and musician. He was fired from his long-running comedy improv show, Wild 'N Out, and it comes after some comments he made on his YouTube show and podcast called Cannon's Class. They were anti-Semitic in nature. They're also anti-white. But it seems to me that everything that here's what he said, just so we have some context. He engaged in a lot of anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, asking why, quote, we give so much power to the theys, and theys turn into Illuminati, the Zionists, the Rothschilds, end quote. And then it was referring to the wealthy Jewish family, often used as a dog whistle for anti-Semitism. Zaid, why is there just so, in the wake of George Floyd's death, for some reason, not everyone, but there have been a number of celebrities who have come out with very anti-Semitic statements in the midst of trying to promote whether it be Black Lives Matter or racial equality, or simply holding the police accountable for the killings of Black people. Why is it always Jews? Why are they always going after Jews?
I mean, it is kind of remarkable, because you started at a place where I think a lot of people agreed, which was like George Floyd died in police custody. A lot of people wanted police reform after that. Then it kind of grew into a larger, like, okay, we need to talk about racial fairness, racial equality, make sure everyone's treated fairly. Sometimes people who are of African American descent are not treated fairly. That morphed into everyone who has an axe to grind on any kind of perceptions of racial equality, racial hierarchy is going to jump into the fray. Yeah. And I think that last part of it meant that, yeah, over the past month, we've seen like Ice Cube, we've seen just, like, several people related to the NFL. Now we saw Nick Cannon kind of come out and start like blaming just Jewish people for various things, which is kind of like a historic go-to. Like, yeah. It's kind of like a muscle, like you have to exercise it every now and then just to make sure. And yeah, I mean, well, look, the particular thing though between African Americans, or I should say non-Jewish African Americans, because some Jews are African American, but like African Americans are outside the Jewish community versus the Jewish community, that's gone on for decades in U.S. history. Mm-hmm. Some of it's linked back to MLK actually gave a speech at the Rabbinic Assembly in the 1960s where he talked about that, or he did an interview there where he talked about this. A lot of it goes back to like just relations between like landowners. Like there happened to be a number of like Jewish owners of like businesses in places like New York City So a lot of poor African Americans live in those buildings. They perceive this like owner-tenant, landlord-tenant relationship as like a racial or ethnic thing, where it was like, the Jews are exploiting us, rather than seeing it as like a relationship of like just economy or like capitalism. They saw it as just like an ethnic conflict, and that ethnic conflict went through Crown Heights. We had very vociferous, like even fighting in the early 1990s. And I think a lot of people have tried to intervene in that situation and say, hey, this is not like an ethnic conflict or something. It happens to be individuals who are sometimes in economic relationships that you're perceiving that way. And by the way, most people aren't even necessarily in that situation. Not every Jewish person is a landlord or, owns a lot of money and is exploiting you. Not every African American subscribes to Louis Farrakhan and his ideologies of blaming basically massive numbers, groups of people, whether it be Jews or gays or white people, for all your woes in the world. But every now and then this flares up because there is this subculture of people who really strongly believe that. Yeah. And I think a lot of times those people just kind of jump out with their kind of go-to group to blame that happens to be Jewish folks in this case. And it's actually kind of remarkable how many people jumped to Nick Cannon's defense when he was doing this, like black celebrities of high stature jumped to his defense.
Yeah. We had Dwayne Wade, we had Diddy, and we had who else? I'm blanking on the other Charlemagne the God.
Well,
I mean,
what was interesting was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who, by the way, is a Muslim, so he's a Habibi as well.
Yeah, he's a Habibi.
100%.
He wrote a great op-ed actually in Time magazine. I believe it was Time, talking about.
It was the Hollywood Reporter.
Oh, that's right, Hollywood Reporter. And he was talking about like, this is like misguided. If you're against hate from one group, you can't be for hate for another group. It's kind of like an all or nothing kind of thing. Like, if you have to practice what you preach here. And that's when Ice Cube jumped on Kareem and was like, they must have paid him to do this. And actually, the exact analogy that he used was really anti-Semitic because he compared him to Judas getting silver to betray Jesus.
Terrible.
Which, of course, that bleeds into theories about Jews betraying Jews, so on and so forth. So, yeah, it really is a subculture. I don't think it's overall that influential or powerful in America, but it's persisted over a long time. Like, it's something that's been with us for decades that a number of people in kind of high status positions subscribe to. And I don't think that, it can't really just be ignored away. Like, people at some point do have to, people like Kareem do have to step up and just say, this is wrong. This is just like scapegoating. This is all the same things you're complaining people do to you. You're doing it to them.
Absolutely.
And it's sad that someone of like Ice Cube status, who's a educated man, who's had great life experiences, who makes really great comedy and great movies. Like, I like watching him.
Oh, but what about his music? That's racist, Zaid. You didn't even mention his music. What the fuck? That's what made him.
It's sad that this guy is like posting like boomer Farrakhan memes and like,
right.
Going through the whole gamut of things because, I think in many ways he's a perfectly nice guy, but he seems to be very closed off from reality here. And he seems to have gotten way down the rabbit hole, him and also a number of the other people we just mentioned. So,
yeah.
I mean, one of them quoted Hitler, didn't they? Didn't Deshaun Jackson literally quote Hitler?
Jackson quoted it. So Deshaun Jackson actually.
That's one of the rules of it's one of the very easy rules of political discussion is do not positively quote Hitler. Like,
not only that.
That's like one of the first rules of political discussion is like, do not, if you're going to quote him, at least make sure it's a negative quote with a lot of context around it. But don't just like post it to like Instagram like it's a Ruby quote or something like, oh, I found so much inspiration.
This is so thought provoking. I don't.
Jay.
Thought-provoking.
Jay, and you're like Twitter's id in this regard because you have a way of just absolutely dragging the fuck out of everyone on that website, particularly the people who are being anti-Semitic. You do a really good job of like surgically destroying them and taking them down. And as we should point out, you're on your like 13th Twitter account.
Right.
So it makes sense. But I will say, in this entire discussion, we did leave out one person who we are often critical of, and that's Jamel Hill from The Atlantic. She actually wrote a very good piece on anti-Semitism in relation to Deshaun Jackson. And it's because she had a Hitler moment herself in which she in 2008 or 2009, she compared Boston Celtics fans to and the Celtics organization to Hitler. It was that bad of a comparison. She got suspended. Ultimately, she left and she joined the Atlantic not too long ago. But I will give her props. She did write a good column on anti-Semitism in the Black community, and that's I think it's titled "The Anti-Semitism We Don't See," and we don't see it because there seems to be a victimhood Olympics in which different groups of different identities are competing to see who's the biggest victim. And I don't know, Jay, if you see that more than I mean, we see it right now. We see anti-Semitism, obviously, from some white supremacists, but we know that they are white supremacists. It's only recently that we're seeing anti-Semitism kind of come out, it bubble to the surface within the Black community.
Right. And honestly, I think the reason why I'm very critical on it and stuff is because I used to view it in that lens growing up in the Middle East as well. Because growing up in the Middle East, being Lebanese and also being the UAE, being around Palestinians, being around Lebanese themselves, Syrians and stuff like that, a lot of the times they will just say that their woes were from Jews. Mm-hmm. And also, not only that, Friday prayers in some mosques, not all of them, but they would be, Jews are this, that we're our brothers are fighting against the Jews. They would say they're fighting against the Yahud and not saying, they're trying to get their freedom from Israel or something. They don't make that distinction. You know what I mean? And I think when you have that in your head, when you have people like Louis Farhan, when you have people like Al Sharpton come in and then they come with such determination that it is the Jews themselves that are putting this hardship on you, that it's hard to get away from that, to get away from that. It's not the Jews. There are individuals, and it's not they can't seem to differentiate against it. And then when you put this critical racial theory on it, where it's like there's a hierarchy of oppression, when people are more successful than others as a whole, that means they are suppressing you. So it's coming from both ways. It's coming from the intellectual community who go in with the critical racial theory, and then it's going in with people like Al Sharpton and Louis Farhan. And the problem is Al Sharpton is propped up like a prominent Black person. Like he's somebody that the dim politicians have to go and have dinner with in order to understand racial relations with Black people. And he's one of the biggest reasons why Black people hate Jewish people. And it's
I mean, he certainly has done his part. I wouldn't say he's the sole reason, but he's definitely done his part to make it sort of give off this impression that Jews are somehow an adversary in all of this, in this struggle for racial equality. Zaid, I mean, there's been a lot of talk about this book, White Fragility. I don't know if you've had a chance to look into it at all, because I only see it in passing. I've never bothered to actually look into it. Have you checked it out?
Yeah. So, my friends and I, we started a YouTube channel recently called The Back Channel, and we had on Katie Herzog and Kamel Foster. And basically, Kamel and Katie had read this book, and I moderated kind of a discussion with them about the book, and they were kind of thumbs down on it. And from what I read of it, and from what I read of Robin DiAngelo, I have not read the entire book, but I have read portions of it. I have kind of a similar take. It seems almost like a version or a variation of what Jay was just describing with Jews. Like she's not saying that racism exists, which of course is true. She's not saying discrimination exists, of course is true. She's not even recounting the history of racism, which is of course very important. She's describing a world where every white person at all times is very, very racist, where every white person, every non-white person cannot have an interaction without their races being relevant, without their races dictating how they think, feel, and see the world. To me, this is actually a very, very racist narrative. It's one that gives basically, I mean, here's the thing, like, it's the really extreme anti-white type of ideology actually reminds me a lot of anti-Semitic ideology, because both ideologies, ironically, the group that you're agitating against, you're saying they have all the power. You're saying they're basically beating you in every dimension. There's no way you can ever do anything for yourself. You're always at their mercy. Which, if you're promoting these theories very seriously, you're kind of disempowering everyone else who isn't in those groups. So when Robin DiAngelo talks about, for instance, Jackie Robinson, she says we tell the story all wrong. We should be talking about all the white people that denied him the opportunity to play baseball. And she says about Black History Month, we should be talking about white racism during Black History Month. It's like, why do we always have to talk about white people? Like, why are they always the center of the story? Like, they aren't the only movers and shakers in history, right? Like, if you go near where I grew up in Atlanta, every elected official at every senior level is African American. Many of the most successful business people and artists are African American. These people are making decisions. They're shaping their lives. Sometimes their decisions, we look at them and we think they're awesome. Sometimes they're not so awesome, but they're fully human agents, right? Kind of creating the world they want to create. It's not always about white people. And I think this book is kind of the white people version of the anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, because it posits them at the center of every single movement in the universe. And yes, of course, there are some white people who mistreat people who are not white. There are some Jewish individuals who maybe have mistreated people who happen to be African American, but they were sort of individuals. They were not acting as ethnic groups. They do not have some kind of monopoly on power. They're not behind every decision that's ever made in the universe. I mean, if you're in the Middle East, you'll hear stories about how Baghdadi must be Jewish. And it's like, okay, like, why must he be? Are you, I mean, like, are you really telling me that out of like billions of Muslims, there can't be one Muslim who's just a kind of a bad guy who happens to be a terrorist? Like, there's probably some who are like that. It doesn't mean all of us are, but there's probably at least one who's like that. He doesn't have to be, like, there aren't even that many Jews in the world. Like, how many Jews are there?
There's like 20 million Jews in the world.
Like, in the entire world, like, they can't be that powerful, okay? Like, they can't dictate everything. It just doesn't make sense. Like, forget about, even if they were all ill-intended, they were all trying to control everything, it's just not possible mathematically. So, we just gotta, whether you're Muslim or you're Black or whatever, just quit this. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, let's have a more intelligent conspiracy theory. Like, I almost feel like Lizard Men is more intelligent. Like, like, we need to move on to the Lizard Men controlling everything, because, like, makes more sense to me.
Oh man, I was just gonna say, I talked to my wife about it. So she's Jewish, and there was one conversation we had about how I think there was, because the people she's engaged with sometimes I believe in some of these Jewish conspiracy theories about how like Jews control the world, and she's like, man, I wish we did. Like, think of how much better things would run. Man.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny though, because people don't promote these conspiracy theories. Like, you could promote a similar, like, if you're just saying that a group is successful at something, so therefore they're in a conspiracy, like, we could talk about the spelling bee. We could say like Indians are in Pakistan, they have a cartel over the spelling bee, right? Like, or over like 7-Elevens, or like, I don't know. Or like, Americans of East Asian descent have a cartel in Silicon Valley or something. But no, like, sometimes groups are successful just because they develop cultural and historical patterns that happen to lead them to success in an area. And there actually are interesting reasons why, like, Jews debanking. Part of it was like religious prohibitions in the Middle East that Christians had imposed, meaning that like Christians weren't doing it, so they kind of filled. That's part of why Muslims became like so strong among merchant class, for instance, like similar reasons. But like, they're actually fairly banal reasons. They're not like a conspiracy. They're not like a deep, dark plot. And I think when you're looking for those at all times, you're always going to find them, because every problem's a nail and all you have is hammers. So
yeah, well, let's get to the last couple of stories before we hear from some Habibis and I go get Ern. So today, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg was discharged from the hospital after being treated for a possible infection for her latest health scare. I seem to think that I wanted to say this, but I didn't on Twitter. You guys watched the movie Black Panther, right?
Yeah.
The main antagonist, Killmonger, he gets like a scar on his body. He like creates a scar on his body for every time he's killed someone. I feel like Ruth Bader Ginsburg would do that for every disease or every cancer
that she's had.
like she takes off her robe and it's just bumps all over her. And then I thought about tweeting that, and I thought, you know what? Someone's going to accuse RBG of cultural appropriation. She's going to get canceled because of it. It's just like that level of society that we live in that would cause that. I think what's going to happen though, if we had a Supreme Court battle before the election, how much worse would that be, Zaid?
Yeah, I mean, it would definitely amp up turnout on the Republican side because Republicans are really, really into Supreme Court. Like, I think that the Kavanaugh fight really helped Republicans preserve their Senate control, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of them were kind of disappointed with what happened in Congress. They didn't feel energized, kind of some chaos from the administration. But once they had the Supreme Court, I think they were pumped up to 11 at that point. And so I think that if there was something like that, it would particularly help the Republican side. Democrats, of course, some of them care about it too, but I think when you survey people, Republicans typically are more focused on the courts. So I think it would probably do a ton on their side.
Jay, if RBG were to retire, would you lose your mind because of all the people you'd be dragging, or do you think you could probably withstand it?
No, I honestly, it would be insane because we're going to. I mean, just look at what happened with Kavanaugh. How, Zay was saying, it was turned to 11 on all sides. I mean, they went all the way back to his high school journal and diary and stuff. So if this happened, let's say that RBJ did retire, and then they wanted to get Amy up on board to be to go on. What are they going to do? How are they going to say that she was a trained rapist as well? Are they going to say in high school for her sorority that she raped a bunch of black guys? I don't understand. I don't know where they would go for this. You know what I mean? Honestly, and to his point, the reason why conservatives and Republicans really rallied behind it as well is because they saw that they went all the way back to high school. They got Ford. Ford is as credible as the person who's accusing Biden of rape. I mean, no, and Jane, was her name Jane? The one who accusing Biden? I forget her name.
That was Tara Reid.
Tara Reid. See, I'm so bad with names. It's not even funny. But
you already pronounced that RBJ.
Anyway, Tara Reid had a couple of friends and people corroborating her story. Ford had none of that. Ford had no friends step up for her. None of that come up for her, but they still pushed it. Kavanaugh was a complete rapist, that he was a trained rapist, with NBC pushing the other person's, I forget her name, but the other person's accusations.
Julie Sputnik and Debbie Ramirez, or Deborah
Right.
Ramirez.
And it just goes to and I think that's also what, triggered Trump to be so popular, is that, they're sick and tired of people saying that Romney was a sexist and going to put black people in chains and all this kind of stuff. And
that Romney gave a woman cancer. Remember that?
And women filled with binders, while Biden is out here right now saying that he has a list of women that he's looking into. It's the double standard of it that's so blatant that I think would really kill it. I honestly think that this would kill. It would blow people's minds. People's heads will explode if RBJ just decided to retire, and then Amy was going to be the nomination. I honestly think their heads would explode.
I just love that you call her RBJ. Just
100%.
A drink.
She has some relationship to LBJ, some long lost relative of hers. So.
Sorry, I get.
Yeah. Okay. So before we get on to hearing from some Habibis, last story in Jihad on Tap today. It was discovered that the National Museum of African American History and Culture published a graphic on its website that suggest concepts such as rational linear thinking, the nuclear family, and an emphasis on hard work are specific to white culture. And these were quotes and excerpts from this 1990 paper by Judith Katz, a white woman, by the way. And I have a hard time understanding whether they were trying to use that as a way to besmirch white people or it was a way to besmirch black people. I mean, Zaid, when you saw that, what went through your mind?
I kind of think it's both, just kind of like white fragility. Like, ostensibly, this is supposed to be helping non-white people by saying that basically they're not capable of the same thing as white people. So you should hold them to a lower standard. You shouldn't be so hard on them. But it's kind of insulting to people to tell them that, like, being on time is something it's not really valued by them, or hard work is not really valued by them, or scientific method is not really valued by them. One of the canards that kind of people are hit with over and over, and actually Terry Crews, is a really fun guy, African-American actor, came out and said this recently, was like, people are told that they're acting white if they do some of these things, like in school, or it's been studied a little bit. I don't think it's as prevalent as maybe it was claimed at one point, but like particularly like integrated schools are like racially divided, like maybe someone will get told they're acting white or something. And that canard basically is saying that the realm of doing all these things that can make you successful and like happy are just for white people. And like, if you do them, you're acting white. And like, that's what a lot of what it struck me as, even though the person who wrote it probably intended this as, well, okay, non-white people just aren't as good at these things, but they shouldn't have to be because these are the providence of white folks, and they created them, like, in almost like to the anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, like the Jews, like they control banking and like you can't get into it because they're exploiting you. Like, I feel like it was probably intended more to do that, to be an anti-white thing, but it's kind of anti-everybody else. Because it's saying that these basic, like, common sense things that most people of any ethnic or racial background or cultural background value really are just the providence of white people, and nobody else can really attain them or achieve them, which we all know is false. Like, this is a blatantly, like, ridiculous set of things. But the problem is this blatantly ridiculous set of things is now being promoted by a vestige of the U.S. government through the Smithsonian Institution. I've seen lists like this before. Like, the text that created this document came from 1990.
Right.
It was written 30 years ago. It just took 30 years to reach this level, right? Because no one took it seriously back then.
Yeah, probably. I mean, Jay, and you, like me, were half white, although I look pretty much 100% white.
Yeah, you do.
Essentially.
100%.
I think you guys are neither. You guys are just your own thing.
I mean, we are our own thing, but Jay and I come from very similar backgrounds in the sense that we both have a foreign-born father.
Sure.
Jay's from Lebanon and mine from Pakistan, and our mothers are both from the United States, and they're white women, and both of them converted. But when you see this, Jay, because and Zaid, you probably can relate to this. There is a heavy emphasis on immigrants being hardworking. That in order to realize the American dream, you got to work your ass off, and it's kind of insane to think that it's only specific to white culture. Do you think that it's the white part in you, Jay, that makes you so hardworking?
To be honest, both my parents were very hardworking. I mean, my mom was raising me, my brother, and my sister, while my dad was working as well. They were both working so many jobs. They were both like trying to get to get us living a better life than what we had. And when you see lists like this, it's hard to see a white supremacist group coming up with something different. It really is. Like, white supremacists will come up and be like, white people are critical thinkers. White people are hard workers. White people are on time. Black people are lazy, And where are you going to differ? It's so demeaning to people of color in general, to immigrants, to people who have come to this country and has shown that with hard work as they do, they can make a better life for themselves. And that's what's so special about America. I mean, We do have our faults, but the problem is with things like white fragility, with the list that came out with this, it's trying to state that the faults of the United States is to suppress the people of color to completion, 100% suppress them. They can't do shit for themselves. It's only for white people. And that's not the truth. I mean, there's some truth to it. There's some work that we can do and have to make better, for more people to have better opportunities and stuff, for sure. But it's not this narrative that they're trying to paint. And people, there's a lot of examples of it that diminish that narrative. And
I mean, the problem is it's so totalizing, right? Like, it could be that there are people in the United States who are discriminated against, or who get it wrong, who have bad luck, who get it wrong, kind of a bad wrong shake, and they don't get a fair shake, they don't get an opportunity. That's very much true. The problem is you're totalizing it, saying this is the way whites are, okay? This is all of them. This is what they are. This is the way non-whites are. This is all of them. This is what they are. And that's just a false narrative, and it's a very self-defeating narrative. Like, if you tell somebody who's not white, you just can't get ahead. There's nothing you can do. You can never be a hard worker. You can't be a great scientist. You can't be on time. You can't be, so on and so forth. Those are not of your culture. That's not for your people. And they come to believe that, then it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Like, that is what you think you will amount to. And I don't think y'all's parents or my parents believed that, coming to a country where they had a thick language barrier, they had thick cultural barriers, they had immigration status problem, they had to wait years and years to be a citizen, they had to start from the very bottom of the economic ladder. If they believed all those things, they would never have gotten to where they were.
Yeah.
100%.
Really quick.
I mean,
There we go with 100%.
No, it really is. And those inspiring stories get suppressed with that narrative. And it's so sad. It really is. Because I had people tell me, read White Fragility and you'll understand, like, America and the racism in it and all this kind of stuff. And it's just depressing. It really is.
I really want to quickly highlight Mary, Jay's mom, chiming in here. Because I recently met the threshold for YouTube monetization. Mary, thank you so much for giving. She says, Habibis, nice to meet you, Zaid. Welcome to Madness, where names don't really matter. I'm here for Ernie and to tell Mujahed to drink water. Now, if you, Zaid, you weren't here last week, obviously, but the thing is, Jay got really hammered. He didn't drink enough water, and he slurred all his words near the end. So let's hear from
right now.
Let's hear from some Habibis as well. Get a couple questions. We didn't talk. Gus asked about Barry Weiss. We're about to get into that. Any other questions about? Let's see. Siraj, got any single siblings? Would they date a Jewish girl too? Because you're adorable. Thank you, Rachel. Ernie is currently single, and he, I don't know if he's into dating humans yet. I can check. But let's see. Fuzzy asked a question for Jay. Hey, Jay, do you have blocks to put on your Peloton bike pedals so your little legs can reach?
Look, being 5'4", I can tell you guys the thing about Peloton that I like a lot is you can adjust the seat, and it goes all the way down to 4'8". So I'm good on it.
Also, Rachel, I meant to get you a serious answer. I don't have any single siblings besides a younger sister. I don't know if you're into women. I don't think my sister is. Thank you again for pitching in. Billy Finn is shooting his shot. Sup, Rachel? Single? Everyone, I think Jay. Can I just say for the record, I think Jay is actually repressing himself and not trying to say 100% all the time. I certainly am repressing myself by not saying essentially all the time. Do you get that vibe?
Yes, I've been holding myself in as much as possible for sure.
Patrick O'Sullivan, thank you for the donation. This is for my white guilt. Oh my God!
Can I ask you too? Do you does your white half like feel guilty sometimes, but then your brown half is like, nah, don't Don't worry about it. Like you can't. So and then that's why you guys can act like normies, because like you have the yin and the yang of the two halves.
You know, I've thought about this quite a bit because I pass for white. When people see me, they don't think, oh, he's got to have some, different, foreign blood in him. He might be of a different ethnicity. No, they just see a Chad and that's it.
Right.
With Jay, it's entirely different. Jay doesn't have to wear a turban at the airport in order to get searched.
No, over here, well, when they see my name, Mujahed, they do search me 100%. Yeah. I mean, it's happened multiple times coming from Lebanon or the UAE, or even when I'm traveling into like Arkansas or Texas. It happens sometimes. Yeah. But to be honest, when I have been in for example, the UAE, I get shit on for being, Lebanese more than anything else. And the funny thing is like everybody there is Arab, and they'll either shit on you for being Palestinian, or they'll shit on you for being Jordanian or Syrian or anything like that. And you're all the same person. You know what I mean? It's like shitting on somebody for being from Nigeria or from being from, Tunisia. They're all black. And we're all brown, but the problem is like somebody is from Syria, somebody's from Lebanon. There's something to pick on.
Yeah.
Being here and going through all of that stuff, even when I'm growing up, it's just something to play on. You know what I mean? I never saw it as it being racist or being bigoted or anything like that. I've always seen it as something to be playful with. Yeah. But coming here to the United States, you do see some racism as being very disgusting.
Yeah.
And I saw a difference in it, to be honest. Like a really big difference between the two. But I still took it and take it as, just going with the flow and just be funny with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was
real quick. Sarah Jacobs, thank you so much. She writes, anti-Semitism is the Orientalism that Edward Said tried to erase from the historical record. Zaid, do you have any? I don't know much about Edward Said. Do you? You seem to be the smartest of the three here.
100%.
No, eventually 100%.
No, I mean, I know a little bit about him in terms of his writing as particularly around the Palestinians. Yeah, I don't know. I think I used to have a podcast with Batya Sagaran, was from The Forge. She came on, and it's kind of a weird situation because she was saying that in some ways that America is actually not an anti-Semitic country. It's like the opposite. Like, we really like Jews in America overall, but at the same time, we have like this current of people that really don't, that have just kind of sat there as a subculture for a really long time. Mm-hmm. So it's a weird situation with a lot of minority groups in America, like Asians, for instance. Like, there's an upper tier of Asians who are super successful in society, but like they have like almost no cultural power at all. Like Harvard will like screen them out for having bad personalities or whatever, right? And they can't do anything about it, which you probably could do something about if they were doing that to like Latinos or African Americans, because there's so many more in the population. So I think Jews are kind of in that spot. Like, they, in some ways, on average, the group is fairly successful, but on other ways, they get a lot of flack just because there's this persistent like bigotry and conspiratorial thinking out there. So
yeah. Andrew Maloney, thank you so much for pitching in. Let's get real quick into Weekly Jihad because I want to talk about Harper's leather before I get the urn. So Zaid came under fire this past week. Well, what was it, last week? Time is irrelevant. Time is a flat circle. But Zaid, tell us a little bit about Harper's leather, because the leather, it's titled "A Leather on Justice and Open Debate." If you're not online, you have no idea what's going on. People in the real world have really no idea. This is really just like an online specific issue. I don't think I saw any coverage of it on cable news. It was all focused on, news publications digitally and on Twitter. And it was all about, promoting an environment of discourse that's civil and that's engaging and doesn't result in cancel culture or result in the cancellation of anyone in particular. So Zaid, take me through it. How did Harper's Leather approach you in all of this?
Yeah, so basically, I don't actually know who was the person who necessarily started it. A couple of at least one of the early signatories reached out to me. Apparently, about 20 people were part of writing this. And basically, the idea was that we didn't point to too many specific cases in this letter. We kind of alluded to a couple, but as a general principle, we believe that in the United States right now, in a lot of intellectual institutions, so like news media, universities, some private businesses, there is a kind of a fear settling in of just like disagreeing with whatever the prevailing norm is in your workplace. This is not something that happened over the past few months, although it's particularly intensive over the past few months. It's something that's happened over the past few years. It maybe has some generational characteristics where I think some of the younger staffers often, I think they value conformity more than they value the value of debate. Like they're very morally certain. Like they think they know what's right. And if people are debating against it, they're kind of roadblocks on the path to achieving the victory of whatever issue they're trying to do. And I think some of the older people, and I'm probably in this generation now, where I'm in that cohort, I think, we have our beliefs, but we also think it's really important to like pause, see our blind spots, have back and forth debates about things, and have kind of a wide range of opinion. Whereas I think the other side wants a narrow range of opinion because they think it'll lead to maybe more cohesion. Maybe it'll get them whatever they're seeking in the world, whatever they want to accomplish, whether it's on public policy or cultural change. And I think they tend to have a much higher sensitivity to dissenting opinions. There was someone, Matt Iglesias from Vox, signed this letter. One of his colleagues said that him signing the letter made her feel unsafe. Now, in my generation of people, most people would define safety as a threat to your physical safety. Someone will punch you, hit you, hurt you, kill you. For a lot of these folks, I think it means if they have an emotional discomfort disagreeing with someone, that can be interpreted as feeling unsafe. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the big things that the letter was fighting against, was saying that we should be able to actually civilly discuss things. Of course, we shouldn't be trolling or hating on each other or whatever, but we should at least be able to have these debates. And people shouldn't be shutting each other down with threats of saying I don't feel safe here, going to HR, trying to get somebody fired, trying to get somebody sanctioned. That's just not a great environment and a great climate for open debate. And I think I've heard countless stories, behind closed door type stories, just people working at publications, people working at nonprofit organizations, I think in universities as well, where people are just really, really scared that they can't speak their mind. And for the most part, these are not people with extreme worldviews at all. Like they tend to be fairly middle of the road type people who typically you wouldn't see as very provocative. You wouldn't see them as like trolls or extremists, but they think that dissenting from a prevailing wisdom in whatever the environment that they're in is just so difficult that they're afraid to do it. And I think part of that is because some people have been fired over extremely trivial things lately. Like there was a woman who, she's a professor at a university. She was in some kind of anti-racist training meeting or something like that. And she blinked for a second, or people thought she was falling asleep. 2,000 people signed a letter saying that she should be fired from her university because they thought she was falling asleep during the anti-racist Zoom meeting, right? And that's not even an unusual thing. When you read that story, you're like, yeah, that's another example of like 15 other things I've heard recently, right? Yeah. There's just this mania that you just have to wipe out dissidents. You have to wipe out people who disagree with you, even if it's a small disagreement. I mean, sometimes these disagreements are very small and very trivial. That mania, I think, is what we're really objecting to more than anything else.
Yeah, just taking a quick break because Andrew Maloney chimed in here. Best blue check response / DM for listing them, while Jay collects his lungs from sucking too much dick.
Thank you.
I would have to say that the best response I've ever gotten was from Elizabeth McLaughlin early on into the list, where she had a complete meltdown because this was after impeachment. And impeachment, she tweeted something like a woke children's story, or not woke children's story, like the woke child who comes in and says, President Trump was impeached and like now the trial. And I'm like, that definitely didn't happen. So we're putting her on the list. And she had a colossal meltdown, literally became a Karen before Karen really took off. And she contacted my place of employment, complained to my managers, and then she accused me online of threatening to murder her children. So that's definitely, nothing has topped that, despite all the times we've gotten blocked. So anyways, thank you for that, Andrew. Sorry, back to Zaid, because I really want to ask you about this whole stuff with Barry Weiss, the New York Times opinion writer and editor, who was, she published just a day or so ago that she was resigning from the New York Times because of the culture, of the hostile work environment that she found herself in, all stemming from not just the Harper's letter, but just in general. She's been there. She was there for 3 years, and you didn't see, like, there were a lot of people complaining about her, and people are still complaining about her. You had Marissa Kabas post a tweet of a rejection email that she got for one of her pitches, and it was like the nicest rejection email I've probably ever seen from an editor. Like, why is there so much hatred towards people like Barry Weiss?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting question, because let's say Barry Weiss worked at the Wall Street Journal. Would there be as much hate for her? I mean, she used to work for the Wall Street Journal, actually. That was her previous job. There probably wouldn't be as much hatred towards her. And I think part of this is like, why does ISIS hate like Shia Muslims more than it hates Jews, right? Like, because it views them as apostates rather than just like heretics, right? Like, people think somebody of Barry's background, New Yorker, kind of liberalish, Jewish, I believe she's also in the LGBT community. Like, people think somebody like that should be on their side on 100% of things. So if Barry is on your side instead on 80% of things, that can be almost more like triggering. It can make you more angry than somebody like Brett Stevens, who you would expect to be on your side in 40 or 50% of things or less, right? Like, they feel entitled to think that she would be on their side because of where she works and her position, or where she did work, what her position was. I think that explains a lot of it. They just see her as kind of a traitor to the liberal cause, because she's, I mean, I know Barry, and I've talked to Barry a number of times. She's fairly liberal, but I think she's also presents some positions that question some liberal dogma, or at least dogma at the New York Times. And like, you're not supposed to question it if you work there. If she was working at the Wall Street Journal saying the exact same things, we'd probably all see her as the most liberal columnist of the Wall Street Journal, right? Like, that's probably her position. But because she's in this space, she's making this space impure. She's kind of an apostate to the religion that's taken over at the New York Times. And I think for that reason, a lot of people felt licensed to harass her, intimidate her. She would constantly get kind of internal work threats. She would get called names. I think there were a lot of complaints about her to management, or at least I think that may be the case. So there was generally just an atmosphere of trying to stigmatize her or shame her within her own workplace, which can be a very damaging thing to do. And I think a lot of the people who were doing it, they would probably never like call her a racial slur or anything, right? They would consider that to be like within their moral system, that's wrong. But like, if they can find some other way to stigmatize her or shame her or dehumanize her on a daily basis, is what it seemed like, it's totally okay, as long as you do it within the politically correct boundaries. But that's not true. Like, if hundreds of people are ganging up on you every day and shaming you just for what you believe, at the end of the day, you might as well be shamed for being a minority in any other way. Because it can have a really debilitating impact on you. And I know over the years I had heard stories about what was happening in the New York Times. I felt really bad for her. I felt like she was kind of sticking it out, just kind of standing up for her point of view politely, but not being vicious and not slurring anyone or demeaning anyone. But at a certain point, I think it just gets too hard to stay in that kind of work environment. And I'm not saying, someone's watching and saying, why are you crying over a New York Times columnist and editor, such a privileged position? Of course, it's not the worst thing in the world, but it does kind of suck. Like, if you were in a workplace and all your colleagues hated you just because you think you believe slightly differently than that, and literally she just behaves slightly differently, believes slightly differently. Like, she's still like an anti-Trump liberal. She's like center left, probably, right? Is how you would define her. And if every day, like, hundreds of people were dissing you in your own workplace about that, after a few years, you'd probably leave too. Like, most of us probably would leave at a certain point.
Speaking of leave.
100%.
100%. There it is. Hold on. I'm going to, while you do that, I'm going to run and get Ern, because people are clamoring for him. And also, I need to pee.
That's why we take it out the thing. No, but I agree with you completely. I held myself from saying 100%. But I agree with you completely. And I think that's what was so special about the letter and all the various people who signed it is like, look, we can have, views that are different from other people and be able to have this debate. To just demonize people, it's going to strengthen their side of the argument as well. Because I think the only thing that really enraged them over at the New York Times was that she was very pro-Israel. Now, instead of saying that being pro-Israel is completely evil, for instance, and that means that we need to call you names, try to troll you into quitting your job or to fire you or any of these aspects of things, I think it strengthens her point of view to other people that are outside of that. And
yeah, typically that's the case. Like when third parties see two sides arguing and one side comes across as like hostile or jerks, the third party group of people generally thinks that side is in the wrong. Like it turns them off.
Right. And I agree with you completely, because what a lot of people are seeing, and also when it came to this to the Harper's letter, is that they people on the right are agreeing with you, Zaid, a lot more than they did before when with a lot of the other things that you written. And I think when they say that you're red pilled or anything like that, I don't like that termination. It's that you haven't really switched your point of view on things. You're where you are. It's the fact that that you see the way that the other places attacking the way that people want to have an open discussion in certain things, that you were on the side of on certain other, aspects of things. You know what I mean? Like, it's not that you're still to the left. You're to the left of like Hillary. You're to the left of, you're a Bernie bro in an instance to a lot of things. It's not like you're certainly, red pilled and now you're going to vote for Trump or anything like that type of thing. It's just that you have intellectual integrity in terms of wanting to have open debate or talk about things.
What's really interesting is a lot of people I know personally, and I won't name any names because it would be inappropriate, but I've worked with a lot of people in my career who I personally knew who thought I was way out there to the left, much more far to the left than them, and maybe I still am. But I think because of this culture of intimidation, they will posture as if they're the most radical people in the world because they're just they're more antagonistic to the right? They're more antagonistic to people who they perceive as dissenters. And because of that, they think they're more radical. But I actually think it's generally more radical to stand up against an intimidating culture, right? Not to just go with the flow. And I think a lot of what's happening right now is a mob mentality. People are kind of just going with a prevailing kind of fashion or culture that's been created. And it's not surprising me that a lot of people who aren't really all that radical, I never saw them really step out of line before going with it because it's easy to go with it. If you're a radical 10 years ago and you're a radical now, maybe you're the one who's going to be stepping out of line, right? And I think that's a lot of how I perceive what I'm doing, because I don't think I've become more conservative in any particular direction. Maybe on a couple of things, but maybe on a couple of things I got more liberal too. I mean, it's not a one direction. I changed my mind a little bit about things over time, but not really that much. I feel like I've stayed the same person, but other people kind of go with trends, and I don't necessarily move with trends as much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say the same. Ernie doesn't also move with trends. He moves for food.
And whatever's on your hand, because he loves
on my hand.
Dogs are extremely, stubborn creatures, and I respect them for that. Like Ern is very loyal to you, Siraj. He's not going to be like, no, I'm gonna go with Nicole Hannah-Jones or something, and that's not what he's going to do.
I completely forgot. We didn't even get to talk about that. So first of all, before we get into that, yesterday was Ern's eighth birthday, and we didn't get the proper. Ern. Yeah, he's well past the age requirement to be president. Dog years. So, and Well, what we're gonna see is that if I want to say if this write-in campaign goes well, I saw a Fox News graphic saying that Kanye West was getting 2% of the vote, according to one poll. I think Earn can beat that shit. In fact, I think Earn can be president all the way.
100%.
100%, essentially 100%. Okay, so in addition to being Habibi of the Hour, Zaid is also Habibi of the Week. It's an honor in which I'm gonna say it essentially. Someone on Twitter, like Zaid, has a response that's so good, and I just have to give it props. And I want to pull it up here because when I saw it, I guffawed. My jaw dropped, and I couldn't believe my eyes. Let me find it here because Nicole Hannah-Jones was the person you were responding to, and for those who are not familiar with Nicole Hannah-Jones, she is the founder of the 1619 Project. And for those, obviously, who have not been following the 1619 Project, it was a fundamentally flawed historical project through the New York Times Magazine that's now seems to be being implemented into school curriculum. And it's here's the tweet exchange. So Connor Friedersdorf, responding or reacting to the resignation letter of Barry Weiss, tweets out, as a reader of the New York Times, I'm disappointed that they're losing more intellectual diversity with the departure of Barry Weiss, and every staffer who bullied her or any other colleague should feel ashamed of themselves. And of course, Nicole Hannah-Jones comes in and responds, interesting how everything in this letter is simply taken as fact. And then Zaid comes in with a fucking 360 windmill dunk saying, well, if it's sloppy with facts, then certainly it will win next year's Pulitzer. And it's just absolutely just amazing. And oh my God. Jay, you got to tell your brother to stop giving us money, but also give us all his money. Thank you, Omar. I appreciate it. Okay, back to the program. I don't know if you guys have moved on beyond the Harper's leather. Did you?
No, I want to hear Zaid's reaction to like dunking on her and stuff. Like, I mean, it was a thing of beauty, to be honest. Like it's one of my weekly's best retweeted tweets because I screenshotted it and I said, this was from Zaid. It was great. It was perfect.
You said, I believe you said that you witnessed a murder. You needed
need a social worker.
A social worker.
They need social workers now. Somebody calls social worker because I was disappointed. And honestly, it was a thing of beauty. And I know I like seeing, I just want to say that seeing pushback from people on a different spectrum of politically than I am, going against the grain of, she won a Pulitzer for it. She's all this kind of stuff. People are saying that she needs to be regarded as a voice in racial relations. Like what compelled you to tweet that?
Well, look, I think that what's happening in the New York Times has been going on for a while, but it actually started with the Tom Cotton op-ed, which was a matter that forced one staffer out, forced another staffer to be kind of reassigned. Nicole Hannah-Jones was part of that. She was part of saying, this threatens my life, et cetera. I don't think that's a direct quote, but it's kind of paraphrase of what she was saying, threatens my safety, right. Blah, blah. She was part of an internal coup at this newspaper, kind of forcing people out for different opinions. Okay, so she can't say she wasn't part of that. That was public. That was nothing private. I don't know what she did privately. Now she jumps in and says, well, why has this all been taken as fact? It's like, okay, Nicole, you can't be a perpetual victim here. You were an agent, a mover here. You were part of the problem. You were part of pushing staff out for just having the same opinions as 40 or 50% of Americans, right? And like, you can't it's possible that, of course, Barry gave her point of view. There are other points of view. There might be holes in what she said, but just going in and publicly, like after one of your colleagues leaves because she just felt so dejected, felt so depressed, jumping in like that, it just showed so little human sympathy and so little human capacity that, I kind of felt justified myself to jump in and say that, well, Barry is not the one who wrote something that was factually full of flaws, that the newspaper refused to even do any clarifications on for months. And then they did a clarification, not a correction. They should have done correction. And then ended up winning one of the biggest awards in journalism. Like Nikole Hannah-Jones, despite being a sloppy, highly ideological, kind of radical, with very little regard for actual fairness or objectivity in journalism, continually is given her way. She was given her way when James Bennett got kicked out. She was given her way with the Pulitzer. She has a MacArthur Genius Award. And then one of her colleagues is in such a depressive mood that she quits her job due to harassment. She just dumps on her. I mean, she needs a reality check, right? Sometimes people have to be brought down to earth and actually think about what they're doing and what they're saying. And I think that so few people are willing to tell some of these people the reality, right? And it's sad. It's sad because so much is going her way. She should at least be able to spare a little bit of sympathy for someone who was mistreated in this way. And I know for a fact that Barry was mistreated. Even if Barry's story is not 100%, maybe Barry made some mistakes here and there. Sure. Maybe Barry exaggerated parts of her letter. I don't know. But she definitely did face a hostile climate. Many people can attest to that. You can see that publicly, let alone privately. You need to have some sympathy for her, man. Like, what are you doing? Like, the sense of entitlement Nikole Hannah-Jones represents at this moment is not one which respects the dignity of people who even disagree with her a little bit. And I guarantee you that most people disagree with Nikole Hannah-Jones more than just a little bit. And so I guess she doesn't respect them either. But I think if you are on kind of the masthead or in the leading positions of America's like biggest, most prestigious newspaper, you need to have a little bit of respect for people who don't share your exact point of view. And I just don't see that from her.
Yeah.
Right. Quick. And I think
I just want to highlight real quick, Billy Finn pitching in 69.69 on the super chat. This is blocking Zaid's face, so let's get him on here. Purest love for y'all in the Habibi movement. Beware of Marxism. Beware of the erasure of American values and American greatness. The founding principles are a mandate for racial equality, not an obstacle. Hit me up, Rachel, at BillyFin18 on Twitter.
That's beautiful right there.
Oh, we can't see that. That's so good. Oh, man, that is Billy. Thank you. That is really generous of you. And also just an amazing, I just really appreciate him shooting his shot. That is just pure, it's just gold. Speaking of which, because Billy brings up the point about how we need to protect what we got, and we have to be aware of the erasure of American values. One thing that really struck me as odd was there was an article just after the statue of both George Washington and Ulysses S. Grant were pulled down by vandals, Antifa, if you want to call them that. And some article had the headline of "Call them the 1619 riots," to which Nikole Hannah-Jones responded, basically taking credit for it, saying thank you or something like that.
It was on a statue of George Washington. It said 1619 on it.
Oh, that's right.
Okay. Great on it. And towards Zaid's point is the fact that these organizations like the New York Times were a bastion of thought. Like, this was where you would want, the most outrageous, not only outrageous opinions, but, a thought process going through to challenge the reader's mind. And that's what the New York Times was. And the New Yorker, for example, with Andrew Sullivan. And for the
New York, I believe that was New York Magazine.
New York Magazine, whichever one it was, that
one of those New York things.
Yeah, but to go more to that point is now they're trying to appease whoever is going to be more outraged, and it's not more outraged. The way that he worded it, especially for Andrew Sullivan, was how to criticize liberalism without being, too attacked on by that audience. And
it's so funny because these are all, I mean, Andrew Sullivan hates Trump. Like, he didn't vote for Trump. He's not going to vote for Trump. He's going to vote for Joe Biden. So is Barry. Like, let's remember, like 40% of American voters, or at least 40, probably 43, 44% of American voters are going to vote for Trump at least, right? Like, so much of America is already kicked out of the room. Like, they're already not even on the map. Now, these people who are also voting for Joe Biden, who also hate Trump, they're also got to be kicked out of the room. Like, it's like they're curating like a boutique, like, church or something, right? Or like everyone has to be in line, in rhythm. And that's not a country. That's not like a big diverse country. A country has all kinds of people with all kinds of views. And they're narrowing it more and more.
And I think everyone tends to forget that America is a melting pot, both in different races, ethnicities, but also thought. I mean, while we do have many radicals on both sides of the spectrum, I mean, you can make the argument about horseshoe theory and how the extremes on both sides tend to have a lot more in common than, say, people in the middle. The reason we have the First Amendment is to protect speech that is offensive to so many people. And it is, honestly, it's very disappointing to see everyone with even a remotely differing take on something have their lives completely ruined. And before I open that back up to the floor, Dennis B., I imagine he's talking about Nicole Hannah-Jones when he said, he writes, when I was DMing with her, her one-word description of herself was racism. That completely blew me away, and I couldn't understand it. I don't know if that's with Nicole Hannah-Jones. I imagine since we're talking about her, she seems to be engaging pretty much with everyone on Twitter to the point where it's like, all right, this doesn't seem like someone who's serious or who's a real professional. You kind of, I definitely don't take myself seriously at all, which is why I engage with everybody because, I mean, why not? But for someone who has, come up with this project that's supposedly being implemented in school systems around the country about how Ernie's getting restless. I'm going to have to bring him upstairs in a sec. I can't see why someone like of her stature is wasting so much time engaging with the trolls. I mean, she walked into that dunk that you threw on her. It was almost like she set up the alley-oop for you.
Well, part of it is, Jonathan Haidt and Greg Lukianoff have a book called The Calling of the American Mind that talks about how there are some of these habits developed among like woke people in particular where they're very mentally fragile, right? Like so many things have gone great for Nicole Hannah-Jones over the past few years. MacArthur Genius Grant, prestigious position at a newspaper, now the Pulitzer Prize. She basically gets to force out her colleagues when she doesn't like their point of view. Like a lot of things are going well for her, yet she still is incredibly fragile enough to be responding in all these situations. She was offended by Barry's letter. That speaks to entitlement, right? Like she's not a victim of all these forces. She just has so much that she doesn't really know how good she has it. Like if I was in that position, I'd just be sitting back. Why would I even be browsing Twitter? Why would I care what Barry said? I just got rid of Barry, right? Like,
yeah, exactly.
People of my political leaning in my newspaper harassed her out of her job. Like she's done. Like, why am I still so fragile and so peeved by this letter? And I think part of it is that she's just not used to disagreement. I don't think she gets much pushback from her editors. They didn't even correct the glaring flaws in her essay for months and months. And when they did, they made sure to do a clarification, which was for those of us who are in the industry, that's the most light touch you can give to someone's article is a clarification because it's saying they didn't make any error. They just weren't clear. Of course, she made a huge error. She promoted a conspiracy theory, basically. But they were so kid gloves with her that they wouldn't even say that. I'm not saying they should be mean to her, but I think they should just treat her like a normal journalist. And right now, I think she's treated as if she's in this untouchable status, and that's why she was so peeved by Barry. She had to jump in and start tweeting about it. To
quote Jay, 100%. This is just something that drives me nuts. It's the idea that this kind of touches on the whole idea of resistance journalism and how all of a sudden you get some level of clout from an interaction with President Trump, say like at a White House press conference, and all of a sudden that particular journalist, their head starts to explode, their ego goes out. It's otherworldly how crazy their ego blows up. You have Jim Acosta, Weijia Zhang, April Ryan, a number of other reporters as well. But like it's just one of those things where it's so difficult to take these people seriously when they're trying to do their job, because they try to, instead of just becoming journalists or just maintaining their status as an objective journalist trying to report the facts, they all of a sudden become sort of like this arbiter of truth, and that they ultimately they come in with a preconceived notion that everything that the president is saying is a lie. And I failed to mention people like Brian Karam of Playboy, Yamiche Alcindor from I think she's now PBS, but there have been a number. Yeah, there just have been too many. Jonathan Karl, another one, and like they all fall into that trap where they just start to look like idiots. And
right,
I feel like Nicole Hannah-Jones has done that, but on a social issue, not so much with the president.
No, 100% with you on that, and I think like they have this idea that they're being these heroic personas of a person that they need to make sure that they are completely against all of these things that are being said, that they have to say that these are all 100% false and all that kind of stuff. And in the outside world, it looks kind of childish. It looks kind of like, not professional, but they think because they're getting props by their colleagues in the industry, that one or two, that they're actually being that they should continue with their behavior. And one of the most things is when people like Yamachi or come out with like they say something and then they're like context, or they say no. Yeah, Meech. Sorry. I'm really bad with names. Whatever it is. But like when it comes out to it like that, when she's every tweet she's saying is like the president says this, and then she's like, note, blah, 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 blah. And one of the biggest things that came against her is like she's like, I talked to these protesters. They know what statues they're bringing down. They know all this kind of stuff. So when they brought down the Grant statues, when they brought down Abraham Lincoln statues, when they defaced George Washington statues, you're saying they know what they're doing. So when they're defacing these statues and other people are saying that they're against that, you're saying that they know what they're doing. You're doing disservice to the act of what they're trying to portray, which is, inequality, racial issues, and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's the problem that a lot of these people have in the industry.
Yeah.
Real quick. I think go ahead.
I was just going to say, Andrew Maloney. So I can't really read this right, but she historic or is Pulitzer prestige over forever. I don't think it was over with Nicole Hannah-Jones, the prestige around the Pulitzer win with her. I think it started to erode when you saw the stories that got Pulitzer prizes, like the Washington Post report on Michael Flynn turned out to be essentially debunked, but yet it still won a Pulitzer Prize. I'm sorry, what was that?
You said essentially.
God damn it. All right, I'm drinking my water, my Essentia for saying essentially.
I mean, there were some good stories that got Pulitzers over the past year.
No, there were definitely good stories. I mean,
even Baltimore Sun's investigations took out a corrupt mayor, for instance, and there were some really good stories. It's just that it seemed like this one in particular, the commentary one that she received, was part of a string of just inflating this person's ego. Like they didn't care whether or not what she did was accurate. Apparently, like they didn't care whether the reporting or the history was accurate. They just felt like it was the in thing to do. Like this is a fast-moving social issue that is trending among a lot of people. People are shifting in that direction, particularly in the elite level. So we need to give an award to her for this. Like I felt like if they wanted to, typically Pulitzer Prize winners, you don't associate them with having tons of factual errors or having a disregard for the truth. And it seems like she and her paper have essentially argued that they don't have to in this case. Like it's okay to just present this in a very subjective manner that is, discards with that in particular. Maybe it does hurt the Pulitzer's reputation a little bit, even if a lot of people, I think, who got it over the past year did do really good work.
Oh, no, I don't disagree that there were actually a lot of stories that did well, or I think deserved it. I'm actually kind of surprised that Kendrick Lamar got a Pulitzer for his album Damn, when and I thought it was a great album, but of all the things that he's put out, I thought stuff like Good Kid, Mad City or To Pimp a Butterfly would have been just as I think probably more deserving, in my opinion, just because of the social, political, and racial commentary that he provides in both. I don't know where Ernie went. Ernie was just there and he just left. He probably went to go hump something.
I'll be right back.
But I do agree. I think with respect to the Pulitzer Prize, just in general, that it does take a bit of a hit, and unfortunately, people won't take it seriously whenever they see a story that that doesn't deserve it get the Pulitzer. But anyways, moving on real quick, just because we're running out of time. We've definitely gone over our 69-minute threshold. Nice. And I don't want to keep you guys up all night. I will say real quick, we're going to skip the election update. Nobody really gives a shit about that. Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein, that's stuff for another time. This Goya Foods thing is so stupid. We have to talk about it. And I mean, is it really just one of those things where, and I have Ernie right here, as you can tell, he came back. Zaid, what went through your mind when you saw the Goya Foods, the like kerfuffle?
I mean, it just like, what is left to politicize in America? Like we politicized everything. Like fried chicken was politicized a few years ago with Chick-fil-A battles, and like finally we've gotten to like Hispanic beans. Like the CEO of the Hispanic Bean Company said something nice about Trump. So therefore, some people are boycotting Goya. Now other people are buying even more of it than they normally do, or maybe they started buying it for the first time. What's really funny is this is going to have zero impact on whether Trump gets reelected in either direction. It doesn't hinge on the bean company. There's zero reason to think that, and yet people are expressing their politics through either buying beans or boycotting beans. And I'm pretty sure the Goya company also maintained like a good relationship with President Obama. Like that's just what they do. They're a bean company. Like they're very popular, like food kind of product, and they're not looking to antagonize the president. That's probably the entirety of the reason why they did this. And it doesn't really have anything to do with politics or the election, or it's just beans. But people are getting excited about it. People are really getting into it. So
Ivanka Trump tweeted a photo saying if it's Goya, it has to be good, and then she wrote the same thing in Spanish. And then Trump posted a photo on Instagram smiling along with the Goya products. I mean, like,
and you had a bunch of celebrities throwing Goya, like full-fledged Goya packages into the trash and saying like, they're never gonna buy from this again and stuff.
Yeah.
It is pretty funny that Trump got like conservatives to buy Hispanic stuff and liberals to boycott it. Like that's a real plot twist for 2020, I would say. Like
I certainly did not see that coming.
No. I really did. I almost said it. But
finally, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, to Zaid's point, it's like that's how insane all of this is, really. like you have people in liberalism in the Democratic Party and stuff who are supposedly all apart about like people of color and propping them up and all that kind of stuff, boycotting beans, and then conservatives doing the opposite of that. It's just, it's mind-boggling. It really is. It completely destroys a lot of like what people's preemptive thoughts were on the issues, and it's just funny.
So before we get into the final topic, everybody's making fun of me for these shorts. Let's see. Billy Finn, LMO, Siraj is wearing child shorts. Where is Fuzzy? Fuzzy, that little bitch. Where is he? Nice shorts, Siraj. They make them in adult sizes. Let's see. Okay. As far as the topic of the Lincoln Project, because we'll wrap it up on this. Ben Howe, who was a video editor for the Lincoln Project, he was fired because of previous tweets that he posted in which he deployed female anatomy as a insult, calling rivals a quote unquote vagina or quote unquote twat. And what's interesting about this is every single, or at least not every single, but at least the head of the Lincoln Project, Rick Wilson, has said all these things about Democrats and more, and probably worse on his Twitter. And he went on Colbert, on Stephen Colbert's late night show, and he just got absolutely roasted for saying the same things that he says now about Trump that he said about like Obama or about Democrats in general. And I think he actually got called out for using the word bitch, which is just funny because I didn't really think of we're now going to start canceling the word bitch because of Rick Wilson. It's just like I don't know why everybody bought into the Lincoln Project, or that at least fell for it. They're a grifting organization, and I actually have to tip my hat to Stephen Colbert for actually dragging the hell out of him.
Yeah, I mean, my recollection of Rick Wilson is, I'm from Georgia, and in 2002 he cut an ad comparing my Vietnam War vet senator, who was a double amputee, he's in a wheelchair, to Osama bin Laden, or at least his face morphed into Osama bin Laden in a TV ad. Wilson uses pretty sleazy methods, right? He's turned a lot of those sleazy methods towards Trump now. He's found a kind of a way to make a lot of money to do that. He's not really welcome in the Trump Republican Party. But it's not surprising that, he would be somewhat cynical in the way that he's approaching all this, and even would maybe throw a younger staffer under the bus for something he could easily have just apologized for and moved on, when he would never do that to himself. Because I think part of Rick Wilson's motivations here is he's a consultant. He's a high rolling political consultant, and he was kind of shut out of the Trump orbit, but he can pull in a lot of money from like resistance moms to do this kind of stuff. So
yeah, and in the midst of all this, Jay, the one thing that we forgot to mention was Rick Wilson's Confederate cooler.
Right,
the Confederate flag on his cooler.
No, and that's what's the funniest thing about it. And like Zaid was saying, is that this guy was a complete jackass. No matter where he was aligning, he was a complete dick to women, to gays issues, to like whatever it may be. When
Muslims,
he was on the
Habibis,
Muslims,
like us.
Yeah, 100%. And when he was like on the Bush side or on the Reagan side or whatever it was. And now he can just see the dollar signs because he so quickly made that $60,000 saying that he was going to make a documentary or whatever that never came to be. And he still pocketed the money and he knows where to make the money. And that's what he's doing right now with the Lincoln Project. I mean, what was it? More than 70% was going to administrative, salaries and stuff like that. Like,
it's crazy.
That's the crazy thing about it. And that right now it's so easy to get that money because there are things that, Trump was or is, and people were scared of, or any of that kind of stuff. But I'm still failing to see the complete prophecy that they were saying was going to happen when Trump was president. The hundreds of thousands of deaths, the millions of people in camps, gay people going through conversation therapy, and all this kind of stuff never happened. But Rick Wilson is profiting against that narrative, and I think that's where.
So what you're saying is you essentially cannot see 100% of the full picture. Okay, we're gonna wrap it up real quick. Just a quick few questions from the Habibis, just to cap off the night, because we definitely went way too long. And I want to say thank you to all the Habibis who have donated, pitched in to the super chat. I want to thank Zaid for coming on here, not literally, but joining us. That's gonna get us canceled. Well, I don't know if there's anything we left out. Maybe the Habibis can
make sure to follow Zaid and subscribe to his podcast.
His Twitter handle is at Zaid Jilani. That's ZaidJilani. Jilani is the last name of one of my really good childhood friends, and his name is Adam Jilani. I went to school with him. He's a classmate of mine in Lahore, at Lahore American School. He is a halfie like me, except his Western half, or his non-Pakistani half, is actually Swiss. So that, if you can imagine, Swiss Pakistani, that is a wild combination right there. Marcos Levy asks, "What's Zaid's podcast? What is it? The Back Channel?"
Yeah, it's the Back Channel, and primarily it's a YouTube show, but I think we're also putting it out as a podcast occasionally, so you can check it out either way.
Perfect. Are you on iTunes, Spotify?
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Boris Faraj. So Boris is joining us from the other side of the pond. He woke up at like 3 a.m. to watch this. Thank you for tuning in, because he makes a lot of good memes, but he never actually sat down live to watch the Habibi Power Hour. So big props to Boris for joining us, as well as all the good memes. Fuzzy Dunlop, another great, Prison Mitch Midnight, Cox, all the Habibis who come through. And let's see, where Andrew Maloney asked, where does Weiss go next? What was the talk about her and Andrew Sullivan, and possibly some people talked about Ben Shapiro maybe all like forming their own thing. I don't see him leaving.
No, I don't think so. I think she is going with something with Andrew Sullivan, to be honest.
Yeah.
If they came to you, for example, like Andrew Sullivan and Bray Weiss, to open up let's say a thoughtful, Wild West, anything goes type of publication, would you write for something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll happily join the Zionist conspiracy with Barry Weiss. That's been my goal for a long time. You kidding me? So
you can't do that when I'm drinking something.
Matt Blakely asks, any thoughts on Governor Kemp voiding local governor's mass ordinances? Government mass ordinances. I don't know what the cases are like in Georgia. Zaid, you being from there, you probably do you still have family down there?
Yeah. I think that, I don't know that Georgia is in one of the worst positions, but there is kind of an increase in the South now. I think just it took its time to kind of move down there, to move around, and I'm not entirely sure why he's doing that. I think that he's encouraging people to wear masks, but for some reason they're against the actual ordinances, and it's not entirely clear why. So
Okay.
I don't know what's going on.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's going to be probably it for Habibi Power Hour. Ernie's getting really antsy. He wants to go upstairs. He probably needs to pee and poop, and I'm sure he's going to poop in my shoes. Zaid Jilani, you've been the best. Thank you so much for joining us. You provide a lot of great insight, and hope to have you on again. Our Habibi of the hour, Habibi of the week, and I would have to say, because he is Habibi of the week, I say he at least gets some immunity from the list for some time. We'll see.
That's one of the perks I get. So
100%.
Essentially 100%. All right, Habibis, y'all been great. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next week on Habibi Power Hour. Peace.
Ma salama.
Masalama.